12:31, so I think I'm going to kick things off. So just very briefly to introduce myself, I'm Ed Anderton. I'm the Learning and Evaluation Lead for the Community Hubs Programme. And this is the first in a series of webinars, and there's also going to be a few blog posts and even a film that we're working on to share our learning from various aspects of the programme. And a quick plug, which I'm just going to put into the chat. 2 sessions coming up, one next Thursday, just focused on the use of co-design within the programme, and contact our colleague Asia, who's organising that session. And then secondly, a week on Monday, the 5th of June, we'll be running a session talking about our self-managing approach, so a learning-led approach to managing how we work with each other within the team. And Arga, who is on the call, is coordinating that session, so just drop her a line to be added to the invites for that. So without any further ado, I'm going to hand over to Soraya to talk about our experience in Hainault.
Thank you, Ed. So Arga's just going to bring up my first slide. So welcome everyone. For those who don't know me, I'm Soraya. I'm the Hainault Hub lead. So I'm working in the Community Hubs team along with my great colleagues Renee and Nita and others who are part of the Hainault Community Hub organisers. So we work on all things related to Hainault and the Fairlop ward, which has included quite an extensive listening campaign over the last 2 years. I know we've engaged with residents and stakeholders about 500 plus listenings. More recently, we've completed a co-design process where we've worked closely with 30 plus residents and local stakeholders. What we've done with these individuals. So we've come up with some design principles to inform the Hainault Community Hub scheme, which will eventually be built on this very same site of the library where we're operating the hub from. So, and of course, more recently, and why we're here today, is to talk about the Hainault Hub and the exciting work taking place every Tuesday morning and afternoon on an appointment basis. So what is this exciting hub about, you ask? I shall start and tell you, should I? The Hainault Hub pilot looks to bringing together a range of council services and partners to better support residents, and it's got a particular focus on anti-poverty related issues. So I'll crack on with the order of today. As you can see from the screen, I will be sharing the rationale, so the reasons behind setting up the pilot. I'll move on to Ed, our learning and evaluation lead, and he'll talk more about the system approach we've taken to designing what that offer is and how we collaborated with all the services and other stakeholders in coming up with that offer. He'll then share the key components of what that looks like should you turn up on a Tuesday morning and what you would expect to see. We'll then be moving neatly on to section 3, which is the juicy bits for me, and that's where our data analyst Arga will share her data-led learning and insights, and I'll follow on from that with key recommendations which have been taken from the group that are there every Tuesday morning at the library. So I'm not sure if everyone's joined the call just yet, but he will be joining shortly, and he will pass over the mic to him to share his reflections and thoughts on the pilot, and perhaps he'll be able to sort of comment on where these recommendations, or at least parts of them, could fit in work streams in his area, and in particular the customer front door work stream. So next slide, please, Arga. Right. So for those of you who aren't very familiar with Hainault, and I certainly wasn't before taking on the lead role in this area, I thought it'd be helpful to share some high-level stats and demographic data for you all. As you can see, a Hainault ward and the Fairlop ward, so this represents both of those wards, and it will be called the Hainault Hub data and demographics. It's slightly different to other wards in that the ethnic profile is not as diverse. At the moment, we can see from the latest census that we are represented by a white ethnic population of around 54.1%, and that's followed by the Asian category. With this white ethnic population actually shows a decline of around 37% since the last census data, and we've had excuse me, significant growth in the Bangladeshi community of around 85%, followed by about 45% increase in the Pakistani group, and that's all GLA data. So the age demographic shows an ageing and less young population makeup, and I don't think that's too dissimilar to the rest of the Redbridge. Hainault has seen, though, significant growth from being the 13th largest populated ward in 2011 to the 4th in 2021. So there's some interesting stats there. That's an increase of around 2,700 plus residents. Next slide, please. Great. So this slide may be a little bit difficult to read, but if you look at the map, that will show you the data that I'm going to share. So the deprivation data shows that Hainault is one of 2 wards in the borough with significant deprivation status, and it's ranked most above in London as a whole, and it's highlighted by the colour red on that map. And just another interesting stat, Hainault ward is also home to a large council home stock. So this data, as well as being a very, interesting introductory slide and data for people who aren't familiar with Hainault, also has really helped us with setting up the pilot. This data, as well as the listenings that we've gathered from residents and stakeholders, have played a really important role in planning and allocating resources. It's also helped us to sort of target our services and interventions accordingly, and supported us in assessing what the potential demand could be falling into that pilot coming in on a Tuesday morning. So getting the right service provision in to support the residents. Next slide. So this is the fit out of the library. So for those who've been or have not been, it's a lovely space. It's recently been refurbished. You've got an open welcome desk there, and then towards the end of the library you have sectioned off spaces where our services operate from. They have the dividers, which create sort of a confidential quiet space for individuals, and we've also got access to a quiet private room at the back of the library where you can have completely confidential conversations with residents if that's needed. I have to mention that the library staff have been absolutely fantastic in accommodating us. They've been really, really supportive of the whole process. So as mentioned before, the site is the very site of the proposed Hainault Community Hub site. And next door to the library, we're strategic partners with HFCA, that's Hainault Forest Community Association, who have the normal sort of community hub feel. They have a huge hall that they rent out. They have a very well equipped digital suite. They've even got their own nursery on site and a very retro bar. You'd have to see it to believe it. So the site itself is located in quite a prime location. It's opposite Manford Way shops and parades. So if you're from the area and you said, oh, a service is running out of the Hainault Library, you would know where to go. It's a very focal point for the community. So just to recap, next slide, please. Great, thank you. So these are the objectives, and I've sort of touched on them already. It's really about creating a visible, meaning and effective presence for Hainault and Fairlop residents. We really want to improve the connections and working with different services, but in a better way, and that sort of integrated approach to supporting residents, and we'll be talking with those services who are in the pilot and have been involved in it from sort of day one. The whole point, and I can't emphasize this enough, is about improving the outcome and supporting residents with their needs and support. So that could be with regard to anything that's sort of related to poverty and debt and wider concerns and issues. So we really do hope and we really do want this pilot to offer the objective of learning and applying what we've learned from it to other extensions possibility across other projects and across the borough. Next slide. Okay, so over to Ed, who's just going to give us a timeline development of how that offer took place and who was involved.
Thank you. So just briefly to sort of play back the process that we engaged with colleagues and partners to design what the offer was going to be. And this is important for us to share because we think it's really fundamental to what the nature of what's happened and some of the testimonials you're going to hear from residents, but also feedback from colleagues who've worked with us to deliver this offer. I think that actually the steps that we took in the lead up to opening up the offer were really crucial. So firstly, a collaborative co-design workshop, which was a session where we took those objectives that Soraya's just shared with you, and we invited colleagues to really sort of kick the tires and polish up a starter for 10 of an offer that we had worked up, or Soraya primarily had worked up, based on initial conversations one-to-one with different teams. So working on it together on a shared call, and looking at our theory of change, which we developed as a program, which is really based on the notion of collaboration and what makes good collaboration. So looking at firstly the what, the what is the activity that we're going to be delivering, what is going to happen every Tuesday on in Hainault Library, and how are we going to recognize if it's working in the way that we want. So out of that conversation, we were very confident between us. It was a really energizing conversation that we had a shared purpose, and we wanted to deliver this and open this up and learn as we go. So understanding that this offer was going to develop and change as the 6-month pilot progressed. So it was opening up at the end of January and designed to be an experiment. And crucial to the experimentation process was building in time every single day that we were there, to reflect with the officers and partners who were in the library at the end of every morning session that we were delivering, to ask them what worked well, how could we improve, what could we change. So week by week, we were refining and changing how the process worked to make it work better for everyone involved. And then after a 6-week period, we then reconvened the service managers from the teams who were involved to have an in-depth 6-week review process. So we were taking each of the weekly reflections and changes and improvements and asking them to take a step back and look overall, actually also inviting officers and partners who are involved in delivering the offer itself, so we could have a really rich discussion to sort of cement what's working well and iron out any other bugs and opportunities to improve. So through this process, if we could move on to the next slide, we have what we feel are some really solid key components of what the offer is. So briefly, I'll take you through these. So firstly, an open and regular drop-in. So we have a morning session, starts at 10, runs until usually 12:30 or 1 o'clock. It's open, people know that they can come. There's something fundamental that we're learning about the regularity. Word of mouth has been a really big theme from discussions with residents coming along. Oh, my neighbour told me about this. They said you were here every Tuesday. You keep coming back. And it's that regularity and the openness. People can just turn up. But they also, in that word of mouth, have been consistently talking about the welcome that we've been able to provide. So we have a registration process and a system that my colleague Arga is going to go into more detail about, that allows us to sort of manage the queue and triage people to speak to the right person. But also within that, we have a floor walker role. So this is one person whose job is to interact with residents as they come in, as they're waiting, and in order to help them feel that they're seen and they're we know that they're on the list. We're helping them to stay and calm and confident that they're going to get heard, they're going to be seen. So, and being heard is the third key component. And I've been, so it's been such a privilege really to see my colleagues, the officers involved, the way in which they engage in really flexible support and deep listening. So listening to residents' issues and what they're bringing to the table, which inevitably doesn't neatly fit into one service pathway or another, but the nature of the support which is offered is to be flexible and to engage with the range of issues that that the resident has. And lastly, the key aspect to this, which has grown over the project and is still growing week by week, is the nature of collaboration and partnership. So we've had colleagues from the local CVS come in and want to work with us, from Citizens Advice. HFCA next door have collaborated with us, along with our colleagues who I hope are on this call from Public Health, the wonderful Sonia Lard, who has developed a sort of well-being coffee morning next door, which has served as a waiting room, a warm, welcoming waiting room for those who are waiting to be seen by the service officers who are available each morning. So those are the key components that add up to the offer. And I'm going to pass back to Soraya to talk about the experience of residents engaging with that offer.
Great, thank you, Ed. So we're now on to testimonials, learning and insights. So we're kind of flashing through this presentation, but this is the chunky part where we'll be getting lots of reflections from testimonials, from services, but before we move on to sort of the data-led learning. So before I pass on to Arga to share that data-led learning and insight, I wanted to share some personal testimonials from residents who have really been moved by the care and the dedication the team have shown them in supporting their needs. So, you know, sugar's a wonderful sweetener. That's just one picture of a cake that a resident spent time to go out and purchase just because she was so touched by the support she'd received. And this individual had actually attended housing colleagues and got support from them, the benefits team, and work Redbridge. So she'd got the Holy Trinity service, really. And often these residents that require face-to-face contact, or at least a large majority of them, come for that contact because they are in some way vulnerable. So, I mean, what do I mean by vulnerable? It could be that they've got language difficulties that are causing some concerns and they'd like to speak to someone face to face. There are people that turn up with disabilities and health concerns, or there are individuals who have just in a bit of a difficult place and they don't necessarily have that mental clarity or headspace to navigate alternative channels for support, such as several phone calls or navigating a council website, etc. So I've got some voice actors ready and I'm going to ask them to just read out some testimonials. So I'll go to voice actor and testimonial 1, please.
Hi, I've come from Gants Hill to see what help is available to me and my disabled sister. A friend visited the Hainault Hub a few weeks ago and she said they were really good and went out their way to help and told me to go there to see how they can help me. It's taken me ages finding Manford Way. Thank you for telling me what cost of living support is. I'll be back next Tuesday.
Great, thank you. Testimonial 2.
I came in about 4 weeks ago with a pain in my thigh due to my sickle cell pain. The team was very helpful. They assisted me in everything I needed to know. Polite. I really appreciated their efficiency and competency.
Thank you. Testimonial 3, please.
Thank you very much for all your help last week. It was so nice to speak to someone regarding my finances and to have it dealt with so quickly and efficiently. You've relieved me of a lot of phone calls and stress, and I just don't need that right now. I also want to say that you had a wonderfully warm attitude towards my situation, and I am forever grateful for that. I hope you have a lovely week.
Thank you. And the last testimonial 4.
Hi, I came in wanting to fill out a household support form and want to go home. I didn't want to register and did not want to wait to see an advisor. The lady explained how the queue system and the process works at Hainault Library, even if all I wanted is the funding. I decided I would wait and see what it is all about, and I am very happy I did. I was told I may be able to get personal independence payment support for the long-term health issues I have been experiencing, and was booked in for an appointment to run through the application. Only through a discussion with a service representative was I able to see ongoing support. I'm glad I didn't just fill out the form, but stayed to have a chat.
Thank you. I mean, that's really warm, great testimonials. I'm sure you all agree. We'll move on to the next slide. Over to you, Arga.
Thank you. So we'll talk a little bit data now. So as Ed mentioned right at the start, we have developed sort of a system. It's not a system. We've actually used the sort of available tools via SharePoint and Power Apps to capture our data. So despite this not being a relational database, it does feel like it for the end users. So this makes it easier for them to navigate and access the right information when speaking to residents. Officers are able to kind of register the residents at the desk, at the front desk, and create the records for them. And then the service officer created drop-in records for each of the appointment with residents, as well as book sort of a post-appointment either in the afternoon or next week. This helps to ensure that the residents get the right support and nothing is missed. They can also view, officers can also view the sort of data that's previously been captured if we have some residents who return to the library with sort of other issues that they might be experiencing. So as you can see on the screen, in total, we have seen 360 residents through the library, through our setup. That is number of people, not number of sort of visits, as we know that we have had some residents returning to the service multiple times over the kind of 5 months we've been there. So as you can see, majority of the largest group who visited the library are Asian, followed by Black, White, British, other. We also captured data on housing status of each of our residents. As you can see, the larger group is private residents, private tenants, sorry, council tenants, and then temporary accommodation. Interestingly, majority of people who come through are actually females. That's quite interesting how that word of mouth spreads sort of maybe, you know, outside of school, on the school runs, etc., etc. And then we also capture the data on whether the English is their first language. So let's explore this a little bit. So you can actually see, and this is not going to work now. Yeah, hopefully it will work. So as you can see, for example, for all the Asian groups, majority of those are in private. Why is this not working? This is what we thought is going to happen. It's not going to work whilst we're presenting it. So as you can see, for example, in terms of the Asian ethnicity, 44% are in, for example, private tenancy, 18% in council tenancy, 21% in temporary accommodation. If we explore other groups here as well, for example, for Black ethnic groups, majority are actually in temporary accommodation. So we already see patterns here, the kind of difference in different ethnic groups for our residents. So I will move us on to a second screen of our dashboard. So those are the drop-ins that we sort of created a little bit later in a day. As Ed mentioned, this was an experiment, we were learning. So as we were going and realized that we had residents returning with different issues, that one record that was created right at the start wasn't sufficient. So we had to come up with a way to capturing that data. So we've come up with the idea of capturing a drop-in records for each individual. So what that means is that service representatives actually create a record for each person they see on a day. So as you can see, that kind of flows. We've got a data here for each of the weeks and how many sort of appointments that each of the services have sort of captured. And also we do have a data on how many sort of HSF applications have been completed as part of our service. So as you can see, majority of the drop-in records are for the benefit service, followed by housing, work Redbridge, and customer service. Just to mention to all the officers here who are involved in this project, we will be publishing this dashboard onto a SharePoint site, so you'll be able to access this data. And last but not least, let's move on to the geographic data for this project. And as you can see, as you know, we've applied sort of area-based offer to this project, and we expected the majority of the service users to come from the Fairlop and Hainault wards. But as you can see on this visual, actually, there is this sort of a larger need for sort of place-based offer to our residents, because as you can see, they do travel from across the borough to attend the Tuesday morning sessions in Hainault, and that's not necessarily the HSF pool that it's kind of pulling them there. It's actually sort of seeing you know, colleagues from benefit service or housing, or the employment service. So it just kind of shows you that there is a sort of a benefit of having that face-to-face offer to our residents. I shall move us on now to Ed.
Thank you, Arga. So I think to a certain extent these graphs speak for themselves, but we took the opportunity to get some feedback from residents who are coming in and then on their way out, having received the support from our colleagues. And as you can see, you know, the satisfaction and the likelihood of recommending the service is very, very high. And you know, the most negative response we got was a neutral response. So I think, you know, it demonstrates that if you give the nature of this offer and open up that kind of deep listening, then residents respond very, very positively. You can see from the chart, the distribution, some of the data that we have about the different services that are being accessed. Emma, and I can see in the chat, you know, the question about multiple services being accessed. So we have you know, some anecdotal data of you know, we've seen multiple cases where people have gone from one conversation to the other, and you know, the lady who got the cupcakes saw all three of the services in one morning, and Arga is just updating to say that she can pull some of that out as well. So I think it's the nature of this holistic offer that's really, really important. So speaking about the holistic and interconnected offer, if we could move on to the next slide. Our brilliant colleagues who've made all of this happen have agreed to share some of their reflections on what's gone well, what could have been done differently, and how else we can improve, and reflections on learning. So Saraya shared these questions with colleagues ahead of time, so hopefully prepared to share some comments and feedback. And first on my list is Sharon from our benefits team. So Sharon, are you with us and prepared to start with a few thoughts? Do we have Sharon?
It's going to be me, Jane, doing it.
Oh, Jane, Sharon. Wonderful. Thank you.
Okay,
well,
okay,
please,
no worries.
I'll pass you the microphone.
So initially, the benefit service provided 2 members of staff. However, this was a bit too much of a strain on our resources, so I reduced it to 1. Everybody felt it was a really positive experience. Unfortunately, at times, I think the HSF claims took over being able to give, you know, initially proper, you know, real meaningful advice where we could sit down and spend some, you know, really good time with people. And I think maybe the stats are slightly skewed. I don't think HSF should be included in the benefit service stats, because we don't administrate or pay HSF. It's a bit of a misconception. It's the anti-poverty team, which is Amar and Randall, So I don't want to take the credit for seeing all those people, because I'm sure we probably did, but it wasn't our service that they required. They just wanted to submit the household support fund. So I thought I'd better let you know about that. Negatives, it did have a bit of a detrimental effect on, you know, our statutory work that we have to do. And we did have to, we found that we did have to get cover for some of the services that we provide. The fact that we could book appointments in the afternoon, because we get a lot of queries to, we've got our own phone line and our own email address, and we got a lot of queries to those areas wanting help completing PIP forms, AA forms, stuff like that. So we were able to use people that were in that, you know, near to that area, and arrange for the appointment on the Tuesday afternoon, which was really helpful, because not everybody can get to Ilford, especially if they've got disabilities and illnesses and stuff. So that was really handy. Another feedback from customers was that they love the face-to-face contacts. You know, I think we'll all agree in this day and age, it is really a rare commodity to be able to do that with somebody. And the team, my team, they say they come away feeling like they've actually done something good. And the times that I've been, I felt that as well. One of the team last week saw a gentleman who was absolutely scathing about everything in the UK, the council, everything else. But at the end of the interview, commented that the work being done at the Hainault Hub was marvellous. So I thought that was a really nice comment. Do you want me to carry on? I've got pages. I'm conscious that I'm waffling a bit.
Oh, Jane, you are not waffling at all.
Okay.
And thank you so much for those comments, and we'll hopefully have time to come back for
Yes,
more, and certainly to
okay.
receive all of your feedback. But for now, if you don't mind, if I
Yeah,
pass,
sure.
I might
I'll be
pass
here all day
on
otherwise.
to. Thank you
I
so
like the
much. I
sound
might
of
pass
my
on
own
to Trevor, if that's okay, to share some reflections.
Hi, good afternoon. So what worked well for us as a team was the opportunity for face-to-face contact. This seemed to benefit certain client groups or clients who perhaps had contacted the council via email, hadn't received a response. The service was an opportunity as well to give the borough a friendly face. It was a great success with clients able to access multiple agencies, as it was likely that the client would have more than one problem when they attended on the day, or were able to give support and assistance in real time. And the customer service team successfully triaging cases on the door, supported by an officer floor walking and a SharePoint software, were absolutely excellent. About Hainault, was a high proportion of council stock is in Hainault, as well as temporary accommodation and private rented accommodation, as the stats show. And we found this client group engaged with the council for support with a diverse range of housing issues. Housing issues can range from the council tends to complain about ASB, temporary accommodation clients needing help with their bidding, or residents whose homes did not meet the needs of their disabled children, or tenants in the private rented sector where landlords had started eviction proceedings. All the clients that attended the hub appeared to have moderate expectations, with a request for only their presented need to be met, rather than making pie in the sky or unrealistic demands. And what we didn't really encounter too many residents having an overwhelming negative opinion of the council. There was a clear sense of community within Hainault, as the service provided by the hub was spread by word of mouth. Housing regularly encountered friends and neighbours accompanying clients to the hub to provide support, translation or advocacy service on their friends' behalf. And without an offer from the hub, there's a clear risk that this client group would have been left behind. Moving forwards, I think the officers that attended are met with such a diverse range of queries. It's almost impossible for any single officer to have the expertise knowledge of so many different areas, as queries can range from specific homelessness advice to assessing welfare benefits, to maximise income, to referrals to children and families to support those with disabled children. Well, what I have found is some of my officers who attend are taking work away with them. That then impacts their working day. That then reduces their productivity and has impacted on my service delivery as a consequence. That's why it's really essential that queries are solved in real time at the hub to prevent a knock-on effect elsewhere in other service areas. Officers are dependent on support from key stakeholders should they need to seek advice or make a referral. Key stakeholders, in fact, all services within the council, need to have a commitment from the top down to support officers who attend the hub. This includes having a dedicated staff member to answer calls, should we contact them while we're at the hub, to deal with queries in real time, or take referrals from the hub with a commitment that they'll respond within 48 hours. And clients are attending with a diverse range of issues and need special advice and offered in real time. And I think we would benefit from having a core team of officers that attend to ensure that the skill set within the team remain high. This may include either recruiting officers specifically to deliver the service, or designated officers from the service areas that will attend on a regular basis. But obviously that will require significant buy-in from service leads.
Trevor, thank you so much, and likewise with Jane, with your feedback. If we're able to pick up every single word of that, what you shared, and Jane, and the others who I'm going to pass to shortly, so we can really feed that in. So we're really maximising the ability to kind of share those insights and recommendations. And really picking up the way that we see that opening up an offer like this reveals other opportunities across the whole system and how interconnected everything is, and there will be knock-on effects. And also the resources that get opened up within officers who are going above and beyond to resolve an issue for a resident that they've connected with, and also the resources from residents. I mean, I'm just incredibly moved by some of the experiences of what I saw personally of neighbours, as you said, coming in to support others. Really, yeah, it's really incredibly impressive, made a huge impression on me. So thank you. So moving on now to a colleague from Work Redbridge. Jasmine, are you with us?
Sorry, I was on mute. Hello, everyone. So I guess to get right to it, Work Redbridge, we are a small team in the council. So unfortunately, we do not have the manpower where we can kind of have someone from the team attending at the hub on Tuesdays when I'm not available. I am a native to Hainault. I wasn't born there, but I practically I've lived in Hainault since I was 5, and still do live in Hainault. So Hainault Library is very, very local to me, literally a couple of minutes walk. So because I have had a lot of times where I've been away, unfortunately, there hasn't been anyone to cover me. So for that reason, our numbers in the stats are lower than they probably should be, to be honest. But anyways, in terms of working in Hainault Library, I will say that, so Work Redbridge are actually based in Redbridge Central Library, where we do actually have a face-to-face service there, and we can see clients face-to-face. So I would say being in Hainault gives us the opportunity to see the clients that aren't able to make it all the way to Central Ilford at the library there. From the clients that I have been able to see, majority of them, it is a case where they aren't able to travel to Central Ilford and do prefer if I would have appointments with them at Hainault Library. So that's definitely given us the opportunity to reach those people that have either health conditions or mental health conditions that doesn't allow them to kind of travel far from their homes. I would say in terms of what's gone well, obviously, other than what I've mentioned, just the layout and the setup of the hub in general, being able to sign clients onto the SharePoint that we have, and then having being able to appoint them to the particular people that they need to see has worked really, really well. I will say though, I think the thing that probably I would say, I guess, is the downfall of it all is the fact that it is very much housing support fund focused. So a lot of the people that we do get come in, I would say that the numbers for Work Redbridge isn't high because majority of the people that are coming in are looking for support in terms of the housing support fund. And then that obviously connects to revenue and benefits and, you know, housing benefits and housing issues. So those that do come in, aren't always eligible for the support that we Work Redbridge give, because they're in positions where, you know, they have health conditions and they're not suitable to go back into the workplace, so there isn't much support we can give them. So I think because perhaps Work Redbridge isn't a focus on in promoting the hub, that we might not shine as much as the other services there, especially the Housing Support Fund. But all in all, I'm just thinking, sorry, I didn't really write much on what could be done differently. I guess probably to be honest, in terms of how it's promoted, it's really, really well, because a lot of people that do come to me say, you know, they've received email, word of mouth. So I feel like it's promoted really well. I think it's just our service isn't a massive service that's really needed hugely compared to the other services. But we have had people request to see Work Redbridge. So yeah, I'd definitely say that there has been a benefit there.
Thank you, Jasmine. I think that's all part of the learning of seeing how you know, what needs present themselves and which needs take priority first, and in some cases how that maps onto services. And I think in terms of Household Support Fund, it's definitely a challenge to manage that as something which feels like a very visible additional form of support, but it actually, the nature of that is very short term, and some of the most meaningful support that colleagues can offer is much more sort of longer term, not just a one-off, but really, making changes either to housing or access to benefits or employment that can really shift the trajectory for someone's life and their outcomes and their well-being over the longer term. So there's real learning there for the offer, but also more broadly for colleagues across the council. So lastly, last but not least, a few comments from our colleagues in public health. So either Sonia or James, just to share a couple of brief reflections. If you are with us, which you may not be. James.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, I didn't quite get the memo regarding the questions, so apologies. I haven't got answers to these. I think Sonia will come in terms, I'll probably be able to answer all of them, but just to give a bit of context as to what we were doing there in the cafe. Sonia and I work predominantly with the Redbridge Place-based partnership, and for those who aren't aware of that, it's effectively a partnership between the council, health services, so primary and secondary care, NELFT, we've got the community and voluntary sector in there, and Vision, and we have key priorities as a partnership we're trying to obviously address. A lot of those are around health inequality. So as you'll be aware, picking up people's economic status directly affects health in a lot of cases, and being obviously where Hainault is, and there was a high deprivation in the area, we felt it'd be a great opportunity to come and work with the team that were already down there doing the library stuff, and that's kind of where we were coming from in terms of what we were looking to do. So our work down there is very much centered around health, mental health specifically. I think was something that was highlighted a lot by residents. But yeah, really pushing our health agenda and bringing in partners that we work with to try and assist with that. So there's a bit of a context for the kind of basis for why we were coming down, and I'll hand over to Sonia for the more interesting stuff.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, guys. Yeah, the coffee morning has run really well in partnership with the pilot. The service users that go to the pilot come and sit and wait with us at the coffee morning. They have tea, coffee. They have an opportunity to have conversations about any other issues that might cause their mental health, I suppose. But we also have other services that come in. We have Redbridge RCVS that support them really well as well. And we've had a number of residents that have come in simply just to ask if they can help renew their disabled badge, simple things that we're able to help them with. Yeah, so it's been a really positive coffee morning. You know, the last 6, I think we started from the 4th of April. We've had 80 plus service users come in. We've got regular residents that are coming in and now acting as our volunteers as well. So they're supporting other residents, people that have newly moved in to Hainault as well. So yeah, it's been a really, really good initiative. And it's run really well with the pilot. And Soraya has been really brilliant actually as well. And I think we worked really well as a team.
Thank you, Sonia, and absolutely agree. I think what you've created there has been just such a lovely, warm, welcoming atmosphere, and it's really been so additional to the experience for residents coming in to get support. So now I'm going to thank you, all of you, and I'm going to pass swiftly on to Soraya to talk a bit about value for money.
Unmute. Great. Thank you, guys. Thank you all the services too for your honest feedback. No one was prepped, no one was paid. I just thought I'd point that out straight away. So moving on to the value for money framework, I'm conscious of time, so I'm going to try and speed through it, but be as clear as possible. So for those who don't know me, I have a number background and I couldn't really present something without presenting numbers and what they could possibly mean for the pilot like this. So the value for money framework, it's really used to assess and evaluate the efficiency and effectiveness of investments such as these pilots. What it's essentially trying to do is look at the benefits gained from this particular pilot and see whether the costs are justified. So if I can ask you to cast your eyes over to the blue boxes, the costs here represent 4 service officers, we're just using average salaries here, being present at the Hainault Library 4 hours in the morning. We've got a further 2 support officers who are the triage desk people who look after the customer contact element of the work. And then we've got a further 1 FTE costed within this, supporting us on a day-a-week basis. So the cost figure, as you can see on the top right, indicates around about 30k in terms of salary costs in supporting this offer. So if you can now cast your eyes over to the green boxes, hopefully you'll be mesmerised by these. What they show here is there's an opportunity to address problems early and avoid escalation. There's a potential benefit. So what we've done here is we've looked at the drop-in visits and said if 1/4 of these visits were translated into a positive outcome, so that would be resulted from support given on issues to benefits, housing support or council tax, this would translate into a positive outcome of around about 7,276, which is the cost of a complex eviction. So we would save that potential number. That 0.25% conversion is a figure that I've shared with the services of those people that are on this call today, and they agree that it's a fair conservative conversion number. So the same applies to Redbridge. If they were able to support a resident into employment or possibly support them in that path, that would result in a saving of around 12,657. And this relates to sort of savings on welfare benefits, reduced demand for social services, and savings on sort of job seeker allowance, etc. These figures are not something I've made up. We've taken them from the Greater Manchester Cost Benefit Analysis tool, which I can share with you later. So, as you can see by looking at the bottom green box on the right, the potential saving is more than 10 times the cost it would take to run this service. I think you'd agree that is a positive benefit cost ratio. Now, I know there are people screaming on the call saying, oh, you haven't, considered this cost and that, so I'm just going to highlight those now. This sort of value for money calculation doesn't include any outlay costs, you're quite right, and setup costs, as we are operating free of charge out of a library. However, on the flip side, and looking at the potential savings, it doesn't also include possible other direct and indirect economic benefits in dealing with issues early, such as the knock-on effect on homelessness, unemployment contributing to social problems and crime, etc., and antisocial behaviour. And it doesn't even include the impact and the potential savings on children and families and what that would entail. So finally, and probably more importantly, this slide doesn't include the unquantifiable value one places on reputation, trust, and the human approach of the pilot, which the testimonials spoke to earlier. So next slide. So these are the recommendations, and I'm going to whiz through them so it gives us a bit of a chance to let Emran come in and share his reflections. We've spoken about clearly there's a demand for this service, and a recommendation would be to carry it on and improve it. Trevor spoke to the difficulty in getting the right expertise in place, and he's already started working on an initiative where there could be a possible live video link for those areas, and so they could come in and it would be a 2-hour window they'd be giving up of their time. If there's talk about social prescribers and connecting that with the work Sonia's doing in the health and well-being section of the Hainault Forest Community Association, and there's also multiple opportunities on digital training, really getting people to self-help. The data capture, so a key recommendation and sort of the backbone of the infrastructure has been how we've captured the data and how we're sharing it with you. And this could be the starting of a dream CRM system. There's loads of benefits of introducing a CRM system. I'm not going to share them now, you're all aware of them. The recommendation really is to keep doing what we're doing here, creating that space for learning. This is a really hard discipline to get right. Integrated approach to working and delivering the best quality service for residents is a hard nut to crack. And allowing spaces like this really does support the learning and the recycling of that learning to other areas to only improve and better the offer. So without further ado, I'm going to pass on to Emran. Thank you, Emran, for joining us. And I'd really like to give you the opportunity to share your thoughts and your reflections on what you've heard today. I know you joined slightly late into it, and possibly recommendations of where you can see this piece of work falling in your areas of work, in particular the customer front door.
I think firstly, I mean, that's really brilliant. That really is, and it just goes to show that integrated approach that Claire talks about, and around early intervention and prevention is something that you guys have really modelled up there in Hainault. So I think almost goes one step further. You talk about that, you know, Ed, your points around listening and kind of creating that sense of community and the regularity of those sessions, and it becomes part of the fabric of the community and the space for people to go and get that support is absolutely critical. I think as part of what we're doing as part of the customer front door, it is absolutely to do with early intervention and prevention. You have, I mean, it's a perfect kind of case study for us to kind of, you know, move forward. The collaborating between services. Obviously, there's ways to kind of bring that together as so that it is seen as one unit. At the moment, it is 3 or 4 or 5 different areas coming together to have those conversations, and then there's several conversations being had with different people, so people are telling their stories more than once. I think that's one of the things that we absolutely need to look at, and look at how we can kind of streamline those conversations. The data was brilliant. I was really interested in some of the data that you kind of, you know, Olga, you kicked up there around and just looking at I kind of caught the corner of that map, which was around the kind of Loxford stroke Clementswood type areas, and that's an interesting kind of observation when you look at where people are coming from. People willing to travel from there to go all the way up to Hainault to have that conversation is really telling. And Patience, your kind of views on in terms of how people are travelling and coming in, and I know we've had those conversations previously, but there is something there about how do we carry this model forward? How do we take the bones of this model forward and then start to kind of push that out there more broadly across other areas of the borough in pilot form? I think that's really important. I think that whole kind of, you know, iterate and iterate again kind of comes into this, and how can we improve? And there's been lots of observations there in terms of what we could potentially do to improve that model. I know that I had a long conversation with Claire yesterday around, you know, thinking about different areas of the borough. I know Julian is looking at a particular area of the borough. We're looking at, you know, with another hat on, we're looking at creating another hub down in the Clementswood area around Ilford Lane. So there's lots of opportunities that we can carry this model out there and start to bring some more richness to that data that you've collected, and start to refine the view of what that model might look like. And all the while, over the course of the summer, for those people who might not be aware, but attending one of the roadshows this week or next, you will get a view of this. It's just around the timelines. So what are we working to in terms of timelines of bringing this model together? Well, if I go to our project plan, we're looking at really kick-starting this work in June. That's in a couple of weeks' time. And that work then carries itself through to, when I say this work, that is the development of this model, then carries itself through for a good couple of months until we can come back to the table and put a business case on the table to say that, look, this is how we should be working. What would be fantastic as part of that business case is not to have just a couple of random case studies on there or customer residence type testimonials, is to have the fact that you've been able to present a pilot here that's worked fantastically well. We can see that it resonates with everything that's being said here. It's more a case of how do we kind of take this pilot, continue with the work that we're doing, but then look to move that into a different area to see whether or not what those various nuances are across different areas of the borough. I'd really be interested in doing that and framing it as under the early intervention prevention programme and really kind of saying, well, could we kickstart a couple of other pilots, in particular your pilot, Julian, looking at you, the one that you're looking at this point in time. So I think there's lots here, and I think it's for us to really kind of take everything that you've just presented here out of this session, and I think more broadly present this more broadly across the organisation as part of the example of what we're trying to get to, that vision of early intervention prevention, bringing services together to have very different conversations with residents who need our support. I mean, I'm again just amazed at the fact that we've got residents travelling from one end of the borough, which isn't easy. Connectivity between Ilford and that end of the borough is never the easiest. But to find residents making that move is phenomenal. Just goes to show.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing
Well
your feedback. Great. We've got a few minutes, so I'm going to open the floor to any sort of questions, answers. Well, presumably we'll all support with answers and reflections from the wider group. Great. I can see a hand up. Tom.
Yeah, this is like everything I like about everything, so well done. I missed the first couple of minutes, so sorry if this was covered already, but when you've got officers in there, I think you've got officers from a few different parts of the council, right? So you've got housing, benefits. How much cross-training was there between them to kind of pick up elements of each other's roles, or was it kind of still kept a bit within their specialism?
It's a great question. So when we designed the offer, I think Ed touched on the sort of collaborative workshop we delivered. So we raised questions on, have you worked together before? What does it look like? How would it look better? And each session after we're in Hainault, so we've been running since January, we have a pre-brief and a debrief where we talk about what went well, what didn't go so great, how could we improve the offer. So as well as sort of establishing some clear parameters and lines of communication and how they would work right at the beginning, we've been refining that process as we've been going along each week. But these guys do work together in other cost of living pop-up events, so it's a model they're familiar with, but this being a static offer, the relationship building is quite key to understanding how it's going. It really helps with the smooth running and the offer to residents. And that sort of debrief has been really sort of important element of that learning cycle of working. How do we work better together?
Cool. Thank you.
Great. We've got Sonia.
Thanks, Sarah. I just wanted to say that we've now opened the CAF at Loxford, which is at the Polyclinic. And we do hope to run something, well, working with you guys to do something similar that we're doing at the Hainault Hub, same at Loxford, if possible.
Excellent. We'll get chatting about that along with Emran and co. Over to Stephen.
So firstly, well done. I think this is a brilliant piece of work. Well done to everyone who are involved. 2 points. The first one is, how are you telling this story to the rest of the UK? Are you getting in the literature? Are you publishing this in journals and peer review things? There's definitely a story to be told here, and if it's working and we're learning, then we should be shouting about it. Second thing, from my specialty area, which is I would be interested in any incidents, be they fire, security, anything at all that you would class as an incident in terms of the risk piece, and just ask that that was reflected in your wider learning piece. Because whilst it's important that we think about how we support the residents, actually how we keep our colleagues and the environment safe and secure so that people are able to feel comfortable within our built environment is of interest to me and my specialty area. So thank you.
Great, thank you, Stephen. Ed's eager to jump in with the first piece. Off you go.
Very briefly, I'm conscious we're running over time. I think we have more time, so we're going to run, and if people can stay on, then we're happy to have the discussion. Great questions. On the first question, we have connections to a community of practice via a network called Human Learning Systems that we're sharing learning through. And secondly, on the security and safety piece, we've had some really interesting discussions. I can see patients nodding there. And there's a much longer discussion about the nuance of how we create a safe and calm environment, and it's the pros and cons of having a security person there versus the approach that we've taken, which has been relational and creating a sense of calm and connection with people. And Sonia's offer with the colleagues there has just increased and amplified that. So it feels safe, it feels calm. There's been a couple of moments, but they've been managed by colleagues in a way to discharge that in a very relational way. So that's still a work in progress, but it's very much a question that we're investigating and reflecting on together. So thank you for raising it.
Great. Sonia, your hand's up, but I think it may be a legacy hand. Well, she's not responding. There are no further questions I can see, so I'm going to wrap this up. Just thank you all for joining and getting involved, sharing your reflections. Thank you to everyone who's been part of the pilot. It continues on. Please do pop by on a Tuesday morning. There's free sandwiches and coffee in the community centre. Pop in and obviously visit me too and say hi. You're all very welcome. And if you do have any other questions or thoughts, please do share them in the question chat, and I'll pick them up after this session. But patience, go on, because you're the face of the customer front door for customer contact centre. You need to pitch in quickly.
Yeah, I just want to say thank you for everybody. Everybody was really supporting. It's nice to work with different teams. Aga, thank you for your slides and support. She's done so well. Nita and yourself, Soraya, and Renee, who's not here, and Eddie, we have a great Andrew and Trevor. I've got to meet, and it's lovely to meet everybody and work together as a positive team. And that's how I can say we are very positive. And moving forward, we just hope the hubs goes forward and continue. But thank you, everybody, and Sue.
Right, I think that's a fantastic note to end on, actually. So thank you all once again, and see you all soon.
Thanks all.
Thanks all. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Bye.